So, what if the most important medical diagnosis of your entire life isn't made by a doctor looking at your symptoms, but, by an algorithm looking at a pattern you didn't even know existed?
Right. Yeah, a pattern that's basically invisible to the human eye.
Exactly. I mean, for all of modern history, we've treated the major pillars of our lives, our health, our learning, our jobs, kind of like a car that's starting to make a funny noise. We wait.
We ignore the rattling.
Yeah, we wait until the smoke is physically pouring out from under the hood, and only then do we pull over and try to fix the damage. But today, we're diving into a really fascinating AI Daily Digest dated June 25th, 2026. And the central takeaway is pretty clear. I mean, the era of reactive living is officially dead.
It really is a profound shift. I mean, we're moving from a society that responds to crises to a society that anticipates them. And what's fascinating about this specific digest is that it completely bypasses all those abstract, sci-fi
Oh,
buzzwords.
totally. No Terminators here.
Right, exactly. We're looking at grounded, tangible mechanisms where artificial intelligence is actively restructuring those core pillars of our daily existence right now, today.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I feel like the baseline assumption for anyone paying attention to tech right now is just, well, AI is fast and it processes a lot of data. We know that, right?
Yeah, that's the standard headline.
But what this digest provides is the actual how and why behind those headlines. So I figured let's start with arguably the most intimate area of your life, your physical health. The source highlights this massive shift happening in hospitals, specifically a 20% improvement in the accuracy of MRI scans.
Which is huge. I mean, 20% might sound like a relatively modest number to, say, a software developer used to, like exponential growth.
Right, in tech, 20% is like, oh, cute update.
Yeah, exactly. But we have to look at the mechanism of how that 20% is achieved and what it actually means in oncology. The AI isn't just, looking at the current MRI image. It's analyzing tissue density at the voxel level.
Wait, really quick, for those who might not know, what's a voxel?
Oh, sure. So a voxel is basically a 3D pixel. So it's looking at the volume of the tissue and layering your specific scan over millions of historical long-term patient scans. So it's detecting these micro variations that the human retina physically just cannot resolve.
Wow. So it's kind of seeing the shadow before the object is even fully there.
That's a great way to put it, but let's take that further, right? In the real world, a 20% earlier detection rate, I mean, that is the difference between a routine, localized outpatient procedure and, God forbid, 3 years of aggressive systemic chemotherapy.
Oh, man.
It fundamentally alters the trajectory of a patient's life by catching the anomaly months or even years before it develops into a life-threatening tumor.
It's just wild. It makes traditional medicine feel like waiting for the engine to blow up on the highway, like I said earlier.
It really does.
And this predictive analytics model, especially for managing chronic conditions like diabetes or heart disease, which the source explicitly calls out. I mean, it functions like the world's most advanced check engine light, but installed directly into your biology.
Exactly.
But how does it actually predict a diabetic crisis before the patient even feels symptomatic? I mean, how does it know?
Well, it does it by synthesizing disparate data streams that a human endocrinologist would frankly never have the time to cross-reference. I mean, the AI is pulling from continuous glucose monitors, yes, but it's also factoring in sleep quality data from wearables.
Oh, wow. So it's pulling in the smartwatch stuff, too.
Yeah, everything. Microfluctuations in heart rate variability, historical blood work, systemic stress markers. It basically identifies the cascading mathematical pattern that precedes a blood sugar crash or a cardiovascular event.
That is insane.
Right, allowing medical staff to intervene not when the patient collapses in the ER, but when the probability threshold crosses a certain line.
Which is incredible for physical longevity, obviously. But I was thinking there's got to be a psychological second-order effect here.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you know that an algorithm is constantly monitoring your biometric data, just waiting for the check engine light to flash, I mean, does that create a new kind of chronic anxiety? Knowing you're predisposed to something before you even feel sick?
Yeah, that is the unseen friction of proactive medicine, and the source text actually hints at this tension. We're gaining foresight, but, foresight is a heavy burden.
Yeah, ignorance is bliss sometimes.
Exactly. It demands a level of continuous physiological awareness that humans, frankly, just haven't evolved to handle. We're used to feeling fine until we don't. And now we're being asked to manage our health in this abstract statistical realm.
Which requires a completely different cognitive toolkit. And if we're using these invisible predictive algorithms to map out our biology, it really begs the question of what happens when we apply that exact same, localized, hyper-personalized data tracking to a child's cognition.
Yeah, the transition in education mirrors the healthcare shift almost perfectly,
Yeah.
but with arguably higher stakes for human development.
Totally. So the digest details these classrooms where AI platforms are tailoring exercises in real time. But I really want to get into the mechanics of what real-time tailoring actually looks like, because I'm assuming it's not just serving up a different multiple choice question if a student gets the previous one wrong, right?
Far from it. No, the mechanism here is generative and highly responsive. So say a student is struggling with a complex algebra concept. The AI isn't just slowing down the pace, it's actually tracking micro-hesitations.
Wait, micro-hesitations? What does that mean?
It monitors keystroke dynamics, like how long a student hovers their mouse over a specific part of the diagram,
Mm-hmm.
and then it dynamically generates a completely new problem, utilizing concepts it knows the student already grasps.
Oh, that's wild.
So if the system knows the child has an affinity for aerospace, the abstract algebra is instantly rewritten into a physics problem about orbital mechanics. It's continuous, invisible calibration.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, though, because I have to push back a little.
Sure, go for it.
If the AI is generating the curriculum, dynamically adjusting the difficulty based on micro-hesitations, and, as the source notes, automating all the grading and attendance tracking, I mean, aren't we just paying human teachers to be glorified tech support monitors?
Right, that's the fear.
Like, are they just pacing the room, making sure a bunch of kids keep their eyes on glowing screens? What are they actually doing?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's a logical assumption to make. But the reality, detailed in the digest, points to a completely different role for the educator. By entirely removing the rote dissemination of facts and, the administrative burden of grading standard quizzes, the human teacher is forced to move up the value chain.
Move up the value chain. Okay, explain that.
They transition from being a lecturer to being a mentor.
But what does that actually look like in a physical classroom? Because, I mean, it sounds great in a brochure, but practically, how do you mentor 30 kids who are all on completely different AI-generated academic paths, doing different orbital mechanics problems?
You focus on the socio-emotional architecture that an algorithm literally cannot build.
Oh, interesting.
An AI can teach a child the mechanics of the French Revolution
Right.
perfectly,
Right.
right? But what it cannot do is facilitate a nuanced, emotionally charged debate between 5 students about the ethics of rebellion.
Right. It can't mediate human emotion.
Exactly. The teacher is freed up to focus on critical thinking, complex problem solving, empathy, and collaborative project management. The human provides the contextual anchor. So the AI optimizes the intake of information, but the teacher optimizes what the student actually does with that information in a social setting.
Okay, I see that. But that hyper-personalized intake, it requires the system to ingest like gigabytes of a child's cognitive data every single week.
Huge amounts of data, yeah.
How they learn, where they struggle, the exact limits of their attention span. I know the source specifically warns about data privacy concerns, and frankly, it feels like an understatement. Who actually owns the cognitive map of a third grader?
Yeah, that is the critical vulnerability here. I mean, in healthcare, your biological data is heavily protected by established laws,
Right.
Things like HOPEA.
Right.
But cognitive data, the real-time processing speed and emotional frustration triggers of a minor, that exists in a massive legal gray area right now.
Mhm.
The platforms providing these incredible educational leaps are often private entities.
Which is terrifying. And we haven't even touched on the digital divide, which the digest highlights as a massive risk. I mean, we're talking about custom orbital mechanics math problems for one kid. What happens to the students in underfunded districts who don't even have access to the hardware to run these tailored platforms?
Right. The gap stops being a slow drift and becomes a vertical cliff.
A vertical clip.
Yeah, because if wealthy districts adopt AI tutors that provide perfect individualized cognitive calibration, and underfunded districts remain stuck with the, industrialized teach-to-the-middle model from the 1990s, the disparity in human capital becomes unbridgeable within a single generation.
Wow.
It's not just a difference in test scores anymore. It's a fundamental difference in how those students are wired to interact with complex information.
Which means these aren't just local school board problems. You can't fix an unbridgeable gap in human capital with a bake sale.
No, definitely not.
This requires a massive structural intervention, and that brings us right into the urgent conversations happening globally regarding societal rules and regulation.
The ethical frameworks. Yeah, the third pillar our source examines, and frankly, the foundation that determines whether the first two pillars succeed or collapse entirely.
So what does this all mean? The text details a recent massive summit of tech leaders and policymakers desperately trying to build these robust ethical frameworks to prevent systemic biases and privacy infringement. But let's be real about the mechanics of regulation here. Regulating this generation of AI, it sounds less like putting speed limits on a car and more like trying to install a steering wheel and brakes on a race car while it's already doing 200 miles an hour down the highway.
I'd actually go a step further. The summit discussions suggest it's more like trying to write a code of conduct for a newly discovered alien species.
Oh, wow. An alien species.
Yeah, because by the time you define what it has already evolved into something completely different. And this is due to the black box nature of neural networks.
Right, the whole we don't know how it thinks problem.
Exactly. Lawmakers are used to regulating deterministic processes. If X happens, then Y is the penalty. But with these foundational AI models, even the developers themselves don't fully understand the latent space between the input and the output.
Which is so crazy to me.
It is. So this raises an important question. How do you draft legislation for a predictive algorithm that comes to the correct medical conclusion, but does it through a mathematical pathway that a human mind literally cannot reverse engineer?
And the terrifying part is the dual-use nature of the tech. Because, you want to pass a law that stops a tech company from tracking a student's micro-hesitations to build a psychological profile for advertising, right?
Absolutely.
But if you regulate data collection too heavily, do you accidentally ban the very same machine learning mechanics that are improving the oncology MRI scans by 20%?
Yes. That is the exact razor-thin tightrope the summit attendees were walking. The consensus from the digest is that you cannot regulate the math itself, you have to regulate the deployment.
Regulate deployment.
It requires a dynamic, living regulatory framework. So we're talking about mandated sandboxing, continuous algorithmic auditing by third-party entities, and really strict liability chains.
So like assigning blame when it inevitably messes up?
Right. If an AI makes a biased loan decision or a faulty medical prediction, the legal framework must instantly identify whether the fault lies in the training data, the deployment parameters, or the human overseer.
It's an accountability matrix, but it also acknowledges that we just cannot afford to suffocate the innovation. I mean, the potential to eradicate chronic disease or, personalize global education, it's just too profound to simply shut off the servers out of fear.
Exactly.
But it requires continuous, hyper-vigilant attention from policymakers who actually understand the underlying technology.
Which is a significant bottleneck in itself, let's be honest.
Right. Finding a politician who understands voxel-level tissue analysis, good luck.
Yeah, exactly.
But these regulations, these dynamic frameworks being debated in boardrooms and summits, they aren't just abstract laws. They are going to directly dictate the daily reality of the place where you, listening right now, spend the vast majority of your waking hours, which is our fourth pillar, our jobs.
The economic pillar. This is where these systemic shifts actually materialize in our personal bank accounts and our daily routines.
Right. And I feel like an informed audience is well past the cliche, panic-inducing question of, is a robot going to take my job? We know that automation disrupts. What is far more revealing in this June 2026 digest is how it details the actual integration process. It isn't about mass replacement. It's about organizations actively reshaping roles and building these autonomous pipelines.
Yeah, we have moved completely beyond the era of the AI chatbot that just answers simple questions.
Thank goodness.
Right. We're in the era of autonomous agents. And the text focuses heavily on organizations investing in upskilling. But we need to define what upskilling actually means today.
Yeah, it doesn't mean everyone learns to code, does it?
No, not at all. It does not mean teaching a marketing director how to write in Python. It means teaching human workers how to orchestrate networks of autonomous AI agents that handle the entire administrative pipeline for them.
Okay, let's ground that. What does an orchestrated pipeline actually look like for, say, an average mid-level manager right now?
Okay, take a routine quarterly data analysis. Previously, a human analyst would pull data from 5 different software platforms. They clean it, format it, run statistical regressions, build a slide deck, and then present the findings.
Whole week of work right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that entire process is now an API-integrated pipeline. The AI agents pull, clean, analyze, and format the data instantly. The human worker literally doesn't touch the raw data.
So if the AI is doing the pulling, the cleaning, the analyzing, and the formatting, what is the human actually doing? Because that sounds an awful lot like the human is just hitting approve on an automated email.
Well, if the human's just hitting approve, their job will be obsolete within a year.
Wow. Okay. Hard truth.
Yeah. The true upskilling, the shift to strategic and creative tasks that the digest emphasizes, it's about shifting from finding answers to identifying the right questions.
Finding the right question.
Exactly. The human worker looks at the instantly generated AI analysis and applies the chaotic, completely unquantifiable variables of the real world.
Like office politics.
Office politics, sure. Or, how will a rival company react to this data? What's the cultural mood of our target demographic right now? How does this pivot affect the morale of the engineering team down the hall?
It's exactly the same shift we saw in the classroom earlier. The teacher is freed from grading to focus on mentorship and emotional intelligence. The office worker is freed from data entry and a regression analysis to focus on strategic empathy, relationship building, and really complex creative problem solving.
The core takeaway from the digest is that successful economic integration relies entirely on striking a balance between autonomous technology and human ingenuity.
Yeah.
The organizations that fail are the ones that use AI simply to do the old things faster. But the organizations that succeed, they use AI to free up their human capital to do entirely new things.
And that reframes the entire dynamic. I mean, it changes the narrative from AI as a competitor to AI is a highly capable intern that frees me up to do the high-level cognitive work I was actually hired to do.
Precisely.
So just think about your own workflow for a second. What are the rote, repetitive pipelines you're currently managing manually at work? And what could you actually build or strategize if an autonomous agent handled all that friction for you?
It really demands a radical reimagining of your own professional value.
It really does. So let's pull back and look at the whole architecture we've explored today. The mission of this deep dive was to move past the hype and look at the tangible reality of this AI daily digest. And the through line is just undeniable.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
In our physical health, predictive analytics are fundamentally altering the timeline of human disease, finding anomalies at the voxel level before they become crises. In our cognitive development, AI is democratizing hyper-personalized learning, forcing us to redefine the human educator as a socio-emotional mentor, while desperately trying to avoid a catastrophic digital divide.
And in our regulatory spaces, we're attempting to build living, dynamic frameworks for a technology that evolves faster than our legal vocabulary, balancing the miracle of early oncology detection against the threat of, unseen biometric surveillance.
And lastly, in our livelihoods, we're moving from cognitive laborers who crunch data to cognitive managers who orchestrate autonomous agents, relying on strategic creativity as our primary value. I mean, it is a total infrastructural rewrite of how a human being navigates a Tuesday.
It is, without hyperbole, one of the most rapid and profound systemic reorganizations in the history of our species. We are fundamentally outsourcing the mechanics of analysis so we can finally focus on the application of wisdom.
Which is deeply complex, but ultimately, I think, an incredibly optimistic trajectory if we navigate it consciously. If we stay aware of the mechanisms, if we understand how the data is used, and if we refuse to be passive passengers. Thank you for diving into the mechanics of this with us today. Your curiosity is the exact kind of active participation this new era really requires.
The optimism is warranted, provided we ask the right questions. The digest continually points back to this concept of human ingenuity, and I want to leave you with a thought to mull over regarding that exact phrase.
Yeah, let's hear it.
If AI is rapidly stepping in to flawlessly execute the analytical mechanics of our lives, if algorithms are mapping our biological futures, dynamically generating our children's curricula, and autonomously running our corporate data pipelines, then raw intelligence is no longer scarce. It is a commodity. And when intelligence becomes a commodity, human ingenuity becomes the most valuable currency on Earth. As this infrastructure solidifies around you, what is the uniquely human perspective, the lived experience, or the specific empathy that you possess, which no algorithm could ever synthesize?
Because no matter how perfectly the system can predict the road ahead, you are still the one deciding where the journey ultimately goes.